Whether you're new to the reMarkable Paper Pro line of products or you've had yours for a year, these are some very useful tips that should help you maximize the value you get out of the reMarkable platform. I'd also highly recommend checking out my other reMarkable tips and tricks video after this one if it provided you with some value. Now, the first tip here is for the reMarkable Paper Pro and the Move. They use a Gallery 3 panel, which is made by eink, but what that means is because it has color, it does not have as good black and white contrast as the reMarkable 2, for example, that has a Carta 1000 panel. You can see here we have decent lighting, but the image sometimes when you're in poor lighting will not look as good. So they did include a front light, which does boost the vibrancy in general, but out of the box, the extra bright setting is not enabled. So you can just either go to your settings or you can hold the little light down here, and then it will take you into the menu setting. And you'll see there's an extra bright option right here, which will boost it. Sometimes when you're in scenarios that the lighting isn't super ideal, it is really nice to have the extra bright. So I recommend just leaving it on, and then you can just adjust that in the quick setting. I'm not sure why it's not enabled by default, because most people's complaint on the original Paper Pro was that it wasn't bright enough. And so that brightest setting there fixes it in general. Now, transitioning to the second tip, because this does have a front light, it is decent for reading on, but it does have an odd form factor for a reader. So in general, what I'll recommend is if you're reading a book to move the toolbar to the top, and then also you can go to the ... down here, and then go to adjust view, and then text settings, and then in the page margins, select the last one. Because this is a 16:9 ratio, that ends up working better for the Move. If you have the large Paper Pro, then you can probably get away with the middle setting or the one all the way on the left, which is wider. And then you just save that, and it should be set. Now, tip number 3 is regarding PDFs. You can see this Game Boy image in a PDF is not fitting very well. So if you go here, you can go to adjust view, and then adjust view again, and you can actually fit to width, which will do that for the whole PDF. So now you can see it's showing that image much better, even though you do lose a little vertical space here. And then when I rotate it, for example, you'll see that's still fit to width. So if you're using it in the landscape orientation, you might want to fit to height there, just for reference. And then in PDFs, for example, you can add templates. So if I go to layers here and then I do a template, then you'll see it'll insert that in between pages in a PDF. I mentioned this in my last video, but you can take little side notes here if you want. But let's say you go back to the page and then you just wanted to insert a full note in between pages in a PDF. You can do that here, and it's pretty easy. And then you should note that in PDFs, if they have hyperlinks, you are able to use those. You won't want to use your pen. You'll want to click on it like that, and then it'll take you to the page, and you can also just go back here. But you'll see if I tap with the pen, it just starts drawing on it. So do that with your finger. If you're planning on drawing on the Paper Pro, I've talked about it in other videos, but they do have shape support now, so you can snap shapes. But these have been around for a while now, since the beginning of the year almost. So one thing I do want to show you that I feel like a lot of people don't really know, but has been around for a while, is when you actually select a shape, you can actually mirror something. Or if you go like that, you'll see it'll invert it. So, and you'll see it'll do its outline there. Those are really useful when you're trying to mirror something. So you can draw half of something and then mirror it. If you're doing symmetrical drawings, perspectives, all that stuff. So those two little lasso tricks are very useful. You can see I only pulled the color layer down here, so it didn't actually do the outline of him. But you can also merge layers, which is another tip here for drawing. You can merge that and then it'll drop down into this one, but I'm not going to do that because I don't want that. Now, piggybacking on the last tip, those of you that are keen might have noticed that I have a grip on here. I've tried many grips to get the one that I really wanted on here. And if you just draw or write a lot on the Paper Pro or the Move, then having something like this with a grip that can still magnetically attach well and still gives you full access to close the flap can be really nice. And I've just found it much more comfortable in general to use for extended periods. These Fuse Pro grips come in a little 2-pack, so you can even use it on another tablet as well, or your iPad. One tip is to save a little money. If you don't want to get the reMarkable folio, you can actually get some on Amazon, like the IO2, and there are a few other ones as well. But for the Move or the bigger brother, that should save you a little bit of money when you're purchasing the tablet, because you will want a folio to protect this thing. It is metal, but the screen is glass, so I'd highly recommend getting a folio. Another accessory that I started using more recently is this Logitech K780 that I have at my desk when I was back home for Thanksgiving. And if you remove the case on the reMarkable Paper Pro Move, you can actually slot it in. This works with the big reMarkable Paper Pro too, but it creates a nice little docking station for it, and it's super easy to use it in landscape or portrait mode because it is a pretty big keyboard. So I like having it there as a little jot pad that's always in my sight when I have lists of things to do and whatnot. I'll link these items below if you're interested in checking them out. Another newer tip for the reMarkable platform is handwriting search. Now I will note you do have to have the Connect subscription to enable this, but now in any note or document that you have, you can go to the ... down there, and then you can do a search, and then you can just type in keywords that you want, and then it'll search that whole note and show you all instances of that keyword. You used to have to do tags for this, so it's nice to see that implemented now. If there's that one thing you can't find and you just remember some keynotes in it, that can be very useful. Another handy feature is actually if you go into a note here and hold it like that, you can go to more and then you can favorite it. So now when you do a 2-finger swipe, you can see all your recent documents, but you can also see your favorites here. That's the one I just favorited right there. And really helpful to find your most used documents right there. And then for the 8th tip, you can see on my lock screen here, I have my name and my email down here. You can set that in the settings. So if you do lose this device, someone can at least know how to get in contact with you. And mind you, even if the battery dies, that should always remain there because eink is bistable and it's not using any power when stuff is displayed statically on the screen like this. And then another security feature is in your unlock. You have the option to set your passcode to 4 digits, 6 digits, or 8 digits. I would highly recommend 6 because 8 can be a little cumbersome if you're opening it all the time and just is a nuisance because eink's a little slower. But 6 is a nice compromise for being able to open it quickly and still having good security. Then you know what? I'm going to give you 2 extra bonus tips. So the original reMarkable 2 and the reMarkable 1 did not have a gyroscope, so you had to set landscape or portrait. But now the 2 reMarkable Paper Pros do. And so if you do that little drop down there, you can enable auto rotation. And then when you're in a note, you can just rotate it and you'll see it'll just flip there. This is especially useful for the Paper Pro Move because it is very narrow here. So if you really want a wide screen, you can just rotate it like that. And then you have a much wider sheet of paper here to use. And then the other tip here I was going to tell you is, so these are some things I need to do, like a to-do list. You can see the toolbar here is overtaking that for typed text. When I originally did my Typefolio review, they didn't have this feature yet, but they added it recently. So you can see I'm in the middle one, but let's say I go to the more narrow one, you'll see everything is now in sight. And as a plus here, you can add to-do lists, and then you can actually check them off too, and it'll cross out the text there. You see that? If you want to see some battery life tips for your reMarkable Paper Pro, you can check that out here. Or if you missed my last video on the 10 tips for any reMarkable device, you can check that out here. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.